The sky above the broken moon was filled with black smoke. Flashes of blue and red lit up the battlefield as plasma bolts cut through the air. Human soldier Connor ducked behind a shattered boulder, his breathing rough and fast. His squad had entered the valley silently, but now everything had gone wrong. Fall back, his cum crackled, but there was only static. He was alone, cut off from the others, surrounded by chaos. He peeked over the rock and saw something moving, a tall alien warrior. Armored in dark green plates, moving fast toward a tunnel entrance. Connor didn't hesitate. He followed quietly, hoping to slip behind enemy lines and find another route back. As he stepped into the tunnel, the world shook. A massive explosion roared behind him. Collapsing the rocky entrance, Connor turned, coughing, trying to push back the debris. No good. He was trapped. Damn it, he muttered. Pulling out a flare and lighting it, the red glow showed a long path ahead, full of dust and old tech panels on the walls. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from deeper inside. He raised his weapon, heart pounding, and moved forward slowly. He found her near the end of the tunnel collapse, breathing hard, one hand clutching her side. An alien elite, taller than him. Her skin pale purple, glowing faintly in the dark. Her armor was cracked, one of her horns chipped. Connor froze, gun raised, but she didn't move. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully, until he saw the blood on the floor. She was badly injured, but then the tunnel shook again. A second quake. And metal beams began to fall. Connor dove forward, grabbing her by the shoulder. Pulling her into a small side chamber, the door sealed behind them, trapping both inside. An old healing pod stood against the wall, clearly alien tech, but still powered. Connor looked at it, then back at her. She was half-conscious, eyes fluttering. Lips moving, she needed help, and so did he. His leg was bleeding now. From a gash he hadn't even noticed. He looked at the pod, then at her. One pod, one chance. A soft light blinked on the machine. Dual bioforms detected emergency bonding. Required, what? Connor whispered, but before he could react, robotic arms extended from the sides and pulled both of them into the chamber. He felt a sting in his neck, and the world went dark. When he woke up, everything was glowing blue. Soft hums and beeps filled the air. He was lying inside the pod, body weightless, and right beside him was her. The alien girl's eyes opened slowly. She looked at him with confusion, then fear. She tried to move away, but the pod's field pulled her closer. Their foreheads touched for a brief second, and something strange happened. A wave of warmth passed through his body. His pain faded, but his mind felt strange. Stretched, he gasped. Her eyes widened too. Did you feel that? He whispered. She answered in a soft, angry voice. No. I didn't feel anything, but her face said otherwise. Connor could feel something too, like a faint whisper in the back of his mind. Not words exactly, but emotions, pain, confusion, and anger. But also something else, something deeper. Hidden under the layers, the pod glowed brighter. A voice echoed from its core. Healing in progress, emotional sync at 12%. What the hell is this? Connor asked, trying to sit up. She grabbed his arm. Don't move. It hurts when you do. He paused, surprised. It hurts you when I move. She nodded slowly. I don't know what this pod is doing, but it's linking us somehow. She said, gritting her teeth, I shouldn't be here with you. Well, I didn't ask for this either, Connor muttered. They stared at each other for a long moment, trapped together, their bodies floating, linked by something they didn't understand, outside. Dust and ash rained from the broken ceiling. Inside the pod, time seemed to stop. Two enemies, wounded. And alone, now bound by something neither of them chose. Connor looked into her glowing alien eyes, and for the first time, he didn't feel hate. Connor couldn't sleep inside the pod. Not really. His eyes were closed, but his mind was full of strange feelings. It was like he was drifting through someone else's memories. He saw flashes of purple skies, tall black towers, and a girl standing alone on a stone path, holding a long weapon. Then the image changed, and he saw a memory that was his but now it felt shared. A rainy day back on Earth, his sister sitting by the window, coughing, waiting for medicine. He gasped and opened his eyes. The alien girl beside him opened her eyes too. She stared at him like she knew what he just saw. "You saw that?" she asked softly. He nodded. "You saw my training," she said quietly. "How I was forced to kill at 13? Connor didn't know what to say. They were still inside the healing pod, floating inches from each other. Skin brushing against skin. Every time they tried to move apart, pain returned. Every time they drifted closer, the pain faded. "Why is this happening?" he asked, frustrated. She looked at him with narrowed eyes. "Because your stupid machines don't understand alien limits," she snapped. "This isn't a healing pod. It's a binding pod used for extreme wounds in battle." "Binding?" he repeated. "It links nerves, shares energy, and creates an emotional bond to speed recovery," she explained. "But only our kind uses it. No human has ever touched one." "Well, now one has," he said, "and I don't like it either." The machine pulsed between them, sending another strange wave through their bodies. They both winced but didn't move. Then they noticed something else. The pod was repairing their wounds. But the deeper damage inside, the fear, the hate, it wasn't healing. Instead, it was being shared, piece by piece. Connor closed his eyes again, hoping it would stop. But instead, he saw another image. The alien girl, younger, standing in the middle of a circle, surrounded by elders, shouting at her. One of them struck her, and she didn't flinch. He felt the pain in his own chest and opened his eyes again with a gasp. "Stop it," he whispered. "I can't," she said. "Neither of us can." Then her voice grew soft, almost unsure. "I didn't expect you to feel it too," Connor looked at her, the anger inside him slowly mixing with confusion. She wasn't just a soldier. She was someone who had been hurt. Someone trained like a weapon. He could feel her loneliness, her anger at her own people. And now, her fear, not of him, but of what was happening. Suddenly, a red alarm flashed inside the pod. The voice returned. "Life support critical oxygen levels falling." They both froze. "There must have been another quake," she said. "The outside system is failing." Connor looked around, eyes searching. "There's only one way out of this," he said. "We need to break the bond." "No," she said sharply. "If we break it too early, the backlash will kill both of us. Then what do? We wait and trust the bond." Connor stared at her. "Trust?" Kai asked, almost laughing. "You just said you'd rather kill me." "I said that before I knew your sister was dying," she replied coldly. He blinked. "You felt that too?" "Yes," she whispered. "I don't know what this pod is doing, but now I can feel your guilt, your pain, even your hope." Connor didn't reply. He just floated closer until their hands almost touched. He didn't reach out neither. Did she? But the pod glowed a soft blue again, and their breathing slowed together. Outside, the tunnel lights flickered. Inside, something unspoken passed between two former enemies. Something neither of them could explain. Something new. The pod whispered. Bond sync increased to 36%, and both of them closed their eyes, not because they trusted each other yet, but because for the first time, the silence wasn't full of hate. It was full of questions, and maybe answers. Connor woke with a jolt, heart racing. It wasn't from pain or noise, but from a feeling, a sharp spike of fear that wasn't his. He turned his head slowly, and there she was, Vela, trembling in her sleep, her jaw clenched. He felt it again. A pulse of panic, A memory that didn't belong to him, burning walls, shouting voices. And a child screaming in another room he wasn't watching anymore. He was inside it. Her eyes snapped open, and for a second, they both gasped. Vela pushed herself back, her hand reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "Stop it," she said in a low voice. "Stop crawling through my mind." "I'm not doing it on purpose," Connor replied. "It just happens." They stared at each other, breathless and tense. The pod's light flickered again, and the air grew thinner. "System failure, support reserves at 9%, the machine warned. Connor shook his head. "We can't stay in here," he said. "We'll suffocate." "There's a service duct behind the pod," Vela said quickly. "Small, but it might lead to the outer shaft." "How do you know?" "'Cause I've been in tunnels like this before," she said, standing slowly. "Now help me move this panel." Connor got up, his legs sore, but stronger than before. They pushed the pod aside together, and behind it, a narrow tunnel just barely wide enough to crawl through. She went first, without a word, and he followed. The metal was cold, the air stale, every movement slow and careful. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by their breathing and the distant sound of the broken tunnel above groaning under pressure. Connor watched her ahead, wondering how someone trained to hate humans could risk her life beside one. Then he remembered he felt her pain earlier. She had no choice in her past, no voice in her war, just like him. Soldiers thrown into a fire they didn't start. The duct turned sharply, and suddenly they stopped. A thin beam of light poured through a small cracked panel above them. Vela pressed her hand to it. "This leads to a gamma ray tower," she said. "If we reach it, we might send a signal." Connor moved forward, but something below shifted, metal grinding against metal. He looked down. There was a long crack in the vent's floor before he could warn her. The surface gave out beneath them. They fell, hard, crashing onto a metal platform. Dust filled the air, and alarms began flashing across a ruined control room they landed in. Connor coughed, groaned, and sat up. Vela landed beside him, already pulling herself to her feet. A voice came from an old speaker. Lifeform detected, authentication in progress. They both froze. Alien signatures confirmed, welcome back, Commander Vela. Connor's eyes widened. "Commander?" he asked, surprised. Vela looked away. "I didn't think it would still recognize me." Suddenly, the doors to the control room began to open. Connor reached for his blaster, but Vela stopped him. "No," she said, "if it's still active, it means my people are near." They stared at the door as footsteps approached. Heavy boots, multiple pairs, getting louder with each second. Connor's hands tightened. Vela looked at him, conflicted, then said quietly, "If they see you, they'll kill you, but you're one of them," Connor said. "They'll listen to you." She shook her head slowly. "Not anymore. Not after this bond." He could feel it. Her fear wasn't for herself, but for him. She didn't want to admit it, but it was real, even if their species were enemies. Something had changed. The door creaked open. Shadows filled the room, and soldiers in green armor stepped forward, weapons raised. One of them shouted, "Commander Vela, step away from the human." She didn't move. Her eyes locked on Connor's, and she whispered, "If I speak for you now, there's no going back." Connor didn't answer. He only nodded, outside the door. The soldiers raised their rifles. Inside the room, two former enemies stood side by side, and neither was ready to surrender. Vela didn't move when the rifles pointed at her. She stood in front of the human like a wall, breathing hard, eyes locked on the officer she once trained under. Her former commander stepped forward, helmet off, eyes full of confusion and disgust. "Explain yourself," he growled. "That creature is an enemy." Connor stood still behind her, silent. Every instinct in his body told him to run or fight, but instead he watched Vela, waiting for her to speak. "He's not a prisoner," she said quietly. "He's bonded to me." The words echoed like thunder in the room. Gasps, shocked murmurs, and then the sound of rifles charging again. "You what?" The officer shouted, "That bond is sacred, used only between allies. Our kind, never with filth." Vela's voice was steady, but Connor could feel the storm inside her. "This wasn't by choice," she said. "A battlefield pod forced. We were both dying, but you stayed with him," the commander barked. "You had the beacon. You could have called for us." "I did not," she said, "and I will not apologize." One of the soldiers stepped forward, confused. "But if you're bonded, then hurting him hurts you too." Vela nodded slowly. "The pain is shared." The commander's face twisted. "Then maybe we end you both and break the sickness at once." Connor stepped forward now, heart pounding. "I didn't ask for this," he said, "but if you're going to kill her for saving me, then do it. I won't let her face it alone." The room went quiet. Even Vela turned toward him. Shocked, she had expected silence, maybe retreat, but not this. Connor looked at her. "I saw your memories, Vela," he whispered. "And maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. And now I know you never had a choice." Something shifted in her eyes, like ice melting for the first time. She looked at the soldiers, then back at her commander, and did something no one expected. She dropped to one knee, placed her hand on the floor, and spoke in the old code of her people. "I invoke the right of trial," she said. The commander's face froze. "That hasn't been used in over 2 generations. "I still have the rank to call it," she said firmly. "You want to judge me for saving a human? Then do it properly." "What's the trial?" Connor whispered. "A choice," she said softly. "If we survive it, we live free. If we fail, we die by the blade." Connor nodded. "We faced worse," he muttered. "Not like this," she said, her voice quieter than ever. The soldiers dragged them both out of the base and into the open night. The ground was black glass, still warm from a long-forgotten blast. A circle of fire was drawn, and elders stood beyond it. Old warriors, judges of tradition. The commander stepped forward, holding a silver spear. The bond between enemy and soldier must be tested by the trial of shadows, he declared. "You will face the echo beasts." Connor looked at Vela, confused. "What's that?" But she was already staring into the fire, jaw tight. "They're blind. But they hunt emotion," she said. "If we fight each other, they'll tear us apart." A door opened nearby, and a low growl came from the darkness. Something huge was moving toward the circle, its skin like ash, its claws scraping the ground. Connor reached for his weapon, but it was gone. Only a single chain was tied between him and Vela. Binding their wrists together, "They want to see if we'll turn." "On each other," she said. "If we do, we lose." The creature stepped into the firelight, tall, jawless, eyes glowing white. It sniffed the air, then charged. Connor didn't think. He moved in sync with Vela. They ducked, rolled, leaped aside as one, their movements strange but synchronized, as if the bond guided them. Every time Connor felt fear, Vela calmed him. Every time she hesitated, he pulled her forward. They were not 2 soldiers anymore. They were one motion, one purpose. The crowd watched in silence as the beast charged again. This time, Vela flipped over its back while Connor pulled the chain tight. The creature fell, screeching, and vanished into dust. The fire circle glowed blue. Silence fell over the valley. Then, slowly, the elders stood and bowed. Connor looked at Vela, confused. "What just happened?" "We passed," she whispered, her voice shaking. "But that means?" "Yes," she said, her breath unsteady. "No one can kill us now, not without breaking the oldest law." The commander dropped his spear and turned away, and the soldiers began to lower their weapons. But Connor could feel it. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The sky above the trial grounds was a deep purple now, heavy clouds hiding the stars. The crowd was gone, the fires were dying, and silence returned to the blackened valley. Connor and Vela stood at the edge of the circle, still bound by the silver chain that now felt like more than just metal. They didn't speak at first. Too many eyes were watching from the shadows. When the last elder finally left, Vela turned to him, her voice low. "You should run." Connor blinked. "What?" "They won't attack you openly," she said, "but they'll try. Accidents, shadows, poison." He stared at her, then stepped closer. "I'm not leaving you. You should." She whispered. "You still have a home. I don't." He shook his head slowly. "Not anymore." Vela looked away, her expression unreadable. The chain clinked softly as they began walking. Through the dust and ruins of the outer passage, they reached a small, broken temple, once used for war prayers. Now silent and forgotten, she guided him inside, lit a small blue flame, and sat down slowly against the wall. Connor joined her. Legs aching, back sore, but mind racing. "You were ready to die back there." He said. "I was trained to," she answered. "Trained to hate humans, to kill them without question." She paused, then added, "But when I saw you share your oxygen, give up your signal beacon, something broke inside me." Connor didn't reply at first. Instead, he looked at the faint scar on her neck, the way her shoulders never fully relaxed. She had lived her whole life in battle armor, even without wearing any. "I saw your memories," he said softly. "I know what they did to you, how they raised you in shadows, and I saw yours," she replied. "That small, sick girl on Earth." "Your sister?" Connor nodded. "She still writes to me, even though I'm 1,000 light years away." There was a long pause. Then Vela said, "I've never had someone to write to." A cold wind blew through the cracks in the temple wall. The blue fire flickered, and Connor, without thinking, moved a little closer. Their shoulders touched, and the pod bond pulsed quietly between them. Not painful, not sharp, just warm. He turned to her slowly. "Do you feel it?" She didn't answer with words. Instead, she leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. Not as a soldier, not as an alien, but as someone tired, someone finally letting go. "You shouldn't trust me," she whispered. "I do anyway," he replied, "even if I shouldn't." But then, just as peace seemed to settle, a low beeping sound came from Connor's wristband. He checked. It tanned, his face went pale. A red icon blinked on the screen. "Emergency recall human command en route." "What is it?" she asked, sitting up straight. He looked at her slowly. "They're coming for me," he said. "Human ships. They found my signal." Vela froze. "And when they see me with you, they'll think I'm the enemy." Connor nodded slowly. "They won't understand the bond. They'll think you forced me. Or worse," she added, "they'll think you're compromised." He stood up, heart pounding. "I need to reach them first." "Explain?" "No," she interrupted. "You need to run to them alone." "I'm not leaving you," Connor repeated, louder this time. "And I'm not hiding," Vela said firmly. "Standing as well. Let them come. Let them see us. You're risking everything." He said, "So are you," she replied. "But maybe it's time they all see what this war really did to us." A bright light appeared in the sky distant. At first, but getting closer, the sound of engines echoed through the valley. Connor and Vela stood at the broken temple door, side by side, not hiding, not afraid, but ready. Because whatever came next, they would face it together, bound not just by a machine, but by choice. The sky roared with thunder as the human dropship came down fast, its lights cutting through the night like search beams through smoke. Connor shielded his eyes as dust whipped across the ruined temple. Vela stood still beside him, her hands open, no weapons, her eyes calm but alert. The ship touched the ground. With a heavy thud, The ramp lowered, and armed soldiers rushed out, weapons raised, armor gleaming under the lights. They stopped in a half-circle, surrounding the two. Their commander stepped forward, a tall man with silver markings on his chest plate, Connor Hayes. He shouted, "Identify." Connor raised one hand slowly. "I'm here." The commander narrowed his eyes, "And the alien beside you?" "She's not a threat," Connor said quickly. "She saved my life." Whispers spread through the squad, eyes locked on Vela. The commander didn't lower his rifle. "She's a ranked enemy combatant. We have standing orders. Forget." "The orders," Connor snapped, "were bonded." The silence after that word was heavier than the ship itself. "Explain," the commander said coldly. "There was a battlefield healing pod." Connor said, "It merged us to keep us alive. Now we share physical damage. Neural sync, she's in my head, and I'm in hers." Vela didn't speak, but her gaze was strong. She stepped forward once. The soldiers flinched, then she dropped to one knee and bowed. The commander blinked, confused. "What is this?" he asked. "It's her culture," Connor said. "This is how she shows peace." The squad didn't lower their weapons. Instead, someone behind the commander muttered, "He's compromised. He's under alien influence," another said. A young soldier raised his rifle slightly, finger tightening, back away from her. "Sir," Connor's voice broke through the tension like a blade. "Don't," he said, loud and sharp. "I know what I'm saying. I know who I am, and I'm not brainwashed." He stepped beside Vela and placed a hand on her shoulder. "If you shoot her, you shoot me too." The commander took a slow breath. "This isn't protocol," he said. "I'll need authorization, then call it in," Connor said firmly. "But while you're doing that, maybe ask why a decorated alien commander just gave up her rank to kneel beside a human." The air was heavy. Radio chatter buzzed softly in the background as the commander stepped aside to speak with someone higher. Meanwhile, the soldiers stared, unsure, shifting from foot to foot. Caught between fear and disbelief, Vela finally stood, her voice calm. "Your people fear what they don't understand. They've been taught to," Connor said. "And so were mine," she replied. Then came the voice from the radio, loud and clear. "Commander, do not engage, extract both subjects." The commander returned, his face unreadable. "You're coming with us," he said. "Both of you, but be aware. This isn't a rescue, it's an investigation." Connor nodded. "We understand." Vela said nothing, but she stepped onto the ramp with him, side by side, bound by something deeper than orders. Inside the ship, soldiers moved away, creating space as the two sat down in silence. No one spoke to them. No one dared. But the look said enough: suspicion, fear, disgust, curiosity. All emotions that once burned inside Connor when he looked at her. Now, all he saw was someone who had stood with him when no one else did. And she, for the first time, sat beside someone who didn't want to use her, command her, or betray her, just understand her. The dropship lifted into the sky. As the planet grew smaller beneath them, Connor whispered, "This is only the start, isn't it?" Vela nodded. "They're not ready for what we are. Then we show them," he said. "Together." She replied, and somewhere in the quiet hum of the ship, their bond pulsed once again, steady, alive, and unbroken. The human space station orbited high above the neutral zone. Clean walls, bright lights, silence broken only by soft machines. But inside the medical quarantine chamber, tension pressed like a storm. Connor sat beside Vela as doctors scanned them again, whispering outside the glass. They had been poked, tested, studied for hours. Every scan showed the same thing: biosync, neural overlap, shared trauma signals. No human had ever merged this way with a Zellery before. To some, it was a miracle. To others, it was a threat. "Do you think they'll let us go?" Connor asked, voice low. Vela looked at the mirror across the room. where a dozen scientists and officers stood watching. "No," she said. "They're not here to let us go. They're here to decide if we're dangerous." Connor leaned back, letting out a long breath. "Funny," he said. "Two people who were ready to kill each other are now sitting in a fish tank." Hoping no one pushes a button, Vela gave a small smile. "Still better than bleeding in a tunnel." He chuckled softly, but then grew serious again. "If they separate us, forcibly, what happens?" Vela closed her eyes for a moment. The bond would snap, violently. "Our minds might not survive it." Connor didn't answer. But in his eyes was something fierce, something unspoken. The door opened at last, and a tall human admiral entered, followed by a Zelari elder in ceremonial robes, both old, both scarred, both carrying the weight of 1,000 battles. They stood in front of the glass and stared at the two inside. "The council has reached a decision," the admiral finally said. Connor stood up, jaw tight. "We're not separating," he said before they could continue. Vela rose beside him. "If that's your decision." "We'll resist," but the admiral raised a hand. "No," he said, "you misunderstand." The Zelari elder stepped forward, his voice smooth and slow. "For centuries, we believed our kinds could never coexist," he said. "But the bond you share proves otherwise." Connor and Vela looked at each other in shock. "You're not being separated," the admiral continued. "You're being assigned." "Assigned?" Connor repeated. "To the Unity Corps," the admiral said, "a joint command between species. To begin building what never existed before, a peace." Vela asked. "No." The Zelari elder said something harder. Trust. For the first time since the pod, neither of them spoke. There was no need. The bond between them pulsed, warm and silent, stronger than ever, days later. They stood together on a new ship, half human tech, half Solari design. The crew was mixed, the mission unclear, but the symbol on their uniforms was new. Two hands, one clawed and one human, gripping the same thread of light. Connor adjusted his jacket, glanced sideways at her. "You ready for this?" Vela smirked. "No, me neither," he said. They walked down the ramp toward the waiting crew, and the whispers started again. "There's the bonded pair. They survived the pod. They broke every rule. But this time, neither cared. They had something rare, something the war couldn't crush. A connection no machine planned, no law allowed, and no fear could stop." As the ship's engines came alive, and the stars stretched open ahead, Connor whispered, "We were enemies, Vela." Finished the sentence without hesitation, "And now we lead." And with that, they stepped forward into the unknown, together.